because Friday night is date night, and so we went to another funeral on Friday night. And I never know what to expect exactly when I do a funeral for somebody that is a stranger to the church. I love those things because you get to really meet some nice new people. So we get to the funeral home, and there was not even a place to park in the parking lot. Cars and people all over the place. There was even a school bus in the parking lot. And I said, wow. The deceased was only 60 years old, had a relatively long journey with cancer. And so we go inside, and it hit me, the school bus. For the last 7 years, during his journey with cancer, he drove a school bus. And so they brought his bus to the funeral. And I get into the funeral home, and somebody said, Pastor Don, before you do the funeral, you've got to go into the bus. So I went into the bus, and the bus driver who brought the bus there is there. And she says, Reverend, I've been driving a school bus for 20 years. I've never, ever, ever seen anything like this. Number one, in his school bus, the kids had assigned seats. Their name was on the seat. There were flowers, balloons, love letters. Thank you, Mr. Will. We love you, Mr. Will. Good luck in heaven, Mr. Will. We need you, Mr. Will. It was just full of letters and stuff from the kids. And that's why the funeral was so full, because the kids that rode the bus and their parents came to the funeral. The bus was his sanctuary. The bus was the kids' sanctuary. Parents loved bringing their kids to the bus because they knew they'd be safe, and they loved Mr. Will. It was just a really neat place to be. And so just before the funeral started, I always try to do something to break the ice, because people look at me like, who is he? And I said, well, I've decided I'm not going to do my church on Sunday. And the one guy goes, yeah, why? And he says, because I've been to church. That bus was a church. That bus was a home. There was Jesus' love in that bus. And it was just so inspiring to see a thing that you see on the roads day in and day out. And sometimes you wonder that here is a man who dedicated his life to these kids, and they loved him back. I also went to see the movie Jesus Revolution this week. And one of my, I think, good friends said, Pastor Don, I think you ought to go see the movie. There's an older pastor who's in a dying church, and he reminds me of you. And I go, thanks a lot. Well, Kelsey Grammer was stunning in his role as an incredibly boring, ordinary minister of a church that was dying. But he has a little spitfire of a daughter who started inviting her hippie friends to church. And her hippie friends came in, and the old codgers left, except for a few. But they kept coming back and brought life to that church, and brought life to a minister who thought his career was over. And it was fun. And of course, it was back in the 60s, and it actually is based on kind of a true story, a true movement from back in the 60s. It also had a lesson, because as things got bigger and more famous, sometimes the preacher became more important than the people. So it taught us a lesson about kind of what's important and what's not. And I think to myself, I have no desire to start a revolution. You know, I'm just happy to get up in the morning and get over here. But in a way, I think we need kind of a quiet Jesus revolution. Because sometimes I think, as Christians, it's easy to make Jesus into somebody or something he was never meant to be. Because we've talked about it time and time again. Jesus was born Jewish, and he died Jewish. He wanted to stay Jewish. He wanted to open the doors of his Jewish faith to people that were on the outside looking in. This Christian thing, we invented that after he left. And a lot of the rules that we make have nothing to do with who Jesus was. Because Jesus was a man of kindness and gentleness. He didn't want people to worship him. He wanted people to worship his Father, his God, the one who sent him. And I think of the gospel lesson this morning about the the Samaritans at the well, and of course they're considered unclean, un-Jewish. And Jesus comes to her and says, please give me a drink of water. And she goes, you're Jewish. Why would you want a drink of water from me? I'm unclean. And Jesus said, I'm not talking about this water. You know, I can drink this water and I'll get thirsty again. But the water I'm giving you is a spiritual water. It's something that goes inside your heart and inside your soul, and you will never thirst again. Because the water I give you brings you acceptance and love and welcomes you into a kingdom that will never end. I had a service for a non-churchgoer this week. I guess I'm the non-churchgoer pastor type, I guess, you know. And someone I knew, but he was a bricklayer and grew up in Orland Park, worked in Orland Park. And here it is, a Thursday at 10:30 in the morning, and he fills the place. Then I start the service by saying, here's a guy that didn't go to church. I come here every day, and I can't fill the place like this. But then I thought about him and his story. He's a bricklayer. And as I was talking about him up here, I looked at all the bricks. All the bricks that hold this church up. All the things that he built in his 71 years in this world. He built sandboxes and swing sets and office buildings and houses. He took the bricks, and the mortar in between them was born of love and commitment to his trade. And I said, yes, he was a bricklayer, but he laid more than bricks. He laid love for his family. He laid a foundation of goodness and hard work and a work ethic, and he loved his country. He was a veteran. Those are the kind of bricks that we need to lay every single day. No wonder he filled the church, because he may not have come to worship Christ, but he embodied Christ just by doing what he had to do to take care of his family. And I was walking in here, and it's a very Catholic crowd. And one of the relatives says, is there communion today, Reverend? And I said, well, yes. He said, well, good luck with them. And I said, wait. So it's time for communion, and I usually say everybody's welcome. And I said, by the way, all you people are accusing me of being Catholic. I love communion. I have communion whenever I can, twice a day if I could. And of all those people in church, there might have been 3 people that did not take communion. Because the door is opened. You lay the foundation. You lay the bricks. You lace it with openness and acceptance. And that's what we get. A week from tomorrow, I'm going to say goodbye to Harry Huddleston. 98 years old, Army vet, Pearl Harbor, would drive all the way from Florida to see his daughter and come to church. He died this week. And he said years ago, when I die, I want my funeral here. Well, he died, and guess what? Harry is coming home. And I look at our church, and I think of people like Harry, and I realize Jesus wants us to come home. He wants us to come home to discover what it really means to believe in him and to follow him. Amen. If you're able to, please rise for the creed.